Plato's Allergory of the Cave is a very fascinating story and a fascinating image, and much misunderstood. And at least I didn't understand it the first time I came across it. When I studied philosophy once upon a time, I literally did not understand Plato, right? And I believe many don't understand Plato because the problem is that if you look at Plato through materialistic eyes, it's quite impossible to understand what this man is talking about, because he's saying that the world is a dream, and what the reality really is the thoughts and the ideas. That is the reality. And that's really hard to grasp your head around once you think that this physical material world is the real world. I mean, it's so convincing. It really looks like that this, what you can touch and feel and smell, that is reality. That is the real world. Okay. So what I'm trying to do in this video is to kind of get a grasp on how can we understand what is Plato trying to tell us in this story of the Allergory of the Cave. All right. So just let's take the story, what it is. The thing is, the story is that there is these slaves that are born into this prehistoric cinema. So they're born into this cave, and so the thing is that they are sitting in some chairs, and they have some kind of apparatus that makes that they can't move their heads, and so they're glued in order to into these chairs, and all they can see is a screen in front of them, and what appears on the screen is images which is being projected just like a movie screen, because there is a light source behind them which they cannot see, and then there is some people are holding up some figures and stuff and forms and so which creates these images on the screen. And so these slaves are thinking that the reality is what appears on the screen. And so what Plato says is that it's only a rare slave who is able to break up the chains that because they're being chained to the floor, and then they can walk out in freedom and understand what and become free. Okay, so that's the story. Just a little extra comment here. There is an interesting point Plato makes when he says that we're born into the cave. And that means that we're born ignorant. And that has to do with our kind of biological programming, that the moment that the ego appears in consciousness, then we are getting into dualism, in the sense that I identify with being this person, and that's where when the story begins, that's where the illusion begins. So it has a kind of a part of our kind of biological programming that we are born into the getting the ego and becoming identified with being this person. And so the learning process is to de-learn oneself from this programming of being born ignorant. So the process is of removing ignorance and becoming free of the cave. But this is what I'm going to explain. And so the thing is that in order to understand this story, it's important to understand the difference between a materialistic point of view of reality and an idealistic point of view. So Plato is an idealistic philosopher. That means that he thinks that the world is an effect of consciousness, that it's consciousness which is the ground of being. This is the same concept that you find in all religions. The religions, they are telling us that there is God who is creating the world, and materialistic science would say it's the other way around. It's that we are creating God as an idea and a projection. But the thing is that from an idealistic perspective, it is consciousness, it's awareness, it's God that creates the world. And it's expressed in the first sentence of the Bible, where it says, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. So that's an interesting sentence. And that means, first of all, that means that God was before the beginning. Okay. So that means that the world, the creation, has a beginning. But God was before the creation. So what God is consciousness, it's awareness. You could call it, what the physicist or some physicists would call it, unlimited potential, the potential to create. But the thing is that it does not have any beginning. God doesn't have any beginning, and it doesn't have any end. So that's really hard to understand from our limited mind and our limited conceptions, because we cannot understand that, because there is a world, and it must have a beginning. But the thing is that we have just to accept that as a fact, that existence doesn't have any beginning. Consciousness doesn't have any beginning. And because it's like saying, where does the universe end, right? And you say, okay, it has to end somewhere. No, it can't. Because then if there is a sign saying, okay, here is the universe where it ends, and they say, well, what's behind that sign, right? And so this is the dimension that we simply have to accept, that existence doesn't have any boundaries. Okay. And so there are these two dimensions in creation or in reality, that there is consciousness, there is unlimited potential, which is outside of time and space. And so the beginning, then the beginning is that there appears a polarization, okay, between heaven and earth. And so the heaven is, you could say, that's the material plane, and heaven is the mental plane. But you could also say it's the division between yin and yang, between Shiva and Shakti, between the masculine and the feminine, between plus and minus. So that is what you find in most religions. You find this polarity, that there in the beginning there is the one, and the one divides itself into two. And out of the two you get the three, and out of the three you get the 10,000 things, as it's expressed, for instance, in Taoism. So God is, of course, a kind of a dubious concept that has all kinds of weird associations to it. And we're not talking about a big person here, right? We're talking about consciousness, awareness, Atman, whatever you want to call it, unlimited potential, which is outside of time and space, which does not have a beginning, and that is able to project this world into existence. So that's why it becomes a dream world, because the world is not so real as that it's almost real. Okay. Because it doesn't. So the thing is that Plato's cave is an ancient version, or we have a modern version of the Plato's Allergory of the Cave, which is the Matrix movies. That the world is actually a computer simulation. We're in a simulated world, like a dream world. But the thing is that it's so well made that we think it's real. So we are the slaves in the cave, because we think that the world is real. But when we investigate, look at it further, we will see that the world is our own imagination. Okay. So if you ask yourself the question, where is the world? The world is in me. The world is in my mind. My only contact with the world is through the five senses. And so what happens is my sense experiences, they come into my mind, and there is my world. And so, but we're interactive in the world. So we can act, and we can, obviously influence the world around us. So, and that's why, because there is instant download in this virtual reality that we're in. So if you compare it to a computer game, which you have these kind of logs on, and its interactive game is made of the same principle. Okay. So, but let's get back to the polarity of that. In the beginning was the word. No, that's true. That's John. The book of Moses or Exodus. That's in the beginning. God created heaven and earth. And so the thing is that if you take a look at a computer, so the thing is that everything that happens in a computer on the computer screen consists of two signals, 0 and 1. And so the mathematical combinations between 0 and 1, that creates all the graphic and all the action on a computer screen. And it starts by a polarity of two forces, plus and minus, 0 and 1. And so we can imagine that this world is actually constructed in a similar way. And so that's why all the religions start off with this formula. In the beginning was the one, and the one divided itself into two. And from the two, you have this magnificent creation. So this is why, for instance, astrology is, in my view, maybe the original science, because the world is mathematical in its nature. And what is the actual computer language of our virtual reality is the mathematical combinations between the planets and the stars. Shall I say that again? That the computer language of our virtual reality is the mathematical combinations between the planets and the stars. And that's why astrology is such an essential science. Okay. And so, of course, the astrology that we have today is just a scratching of the surface where you can actually say some things about reality and the world. But the actual language of the virtual reality is mathematical in the same sense that the computer language in any computer is the mathematical combinations of two signals, 0 and 1. Okay, so that is this is an idealistic worldview. How is that possible? How can ideas, how can consciousness project this world? There is a physicist, Nassim Haramein. He gives a nice image of this. How can this material world, or this apparently material world, get into existence? And he gives this image of a swimming pool or a pool of water. And so within this, before anything is created, before this world came into appearance, there was nothing going on. If you looked into this swimming pool, there was absolutely no movement. So there was no experience. There was nothing happening. Okay, this is before there is a world. And then all of a sudden, because of energy is being activated, there is all of a sudden a polarity. There's all of a sudden movement, and there is a small spiral appearing in the water. And this spiral has a beginning, it has a duration, and it has an end. And so then you would say, wow, finally there is something happening. There is an experience, there is an object of experience. Okay. And then there is a new spiral, and a new spiral, and a new spiral, and then all of a sudden, all this starts to spiral because of this original polarity. And then eventually it spirals into a whole world. Okay. So this is how we can imagine that from an idealistic perspective, that it's consciousness, it's ideas that has created this world. And so we are in this dream world. This is what I think Plato is trying to reveal in the Allergory of the Cave. Okay. And this is the kind of a universal knowledge. You find it everywhere if you go into ancient scriptures. You find it in Christianity, because the whole project is how to become free of the illusion, how to become free of the dream, because we are slaves as long as you believe that the world is real. Okay, then we are driven by our fears and our desires, and we are imprisoned by our own minds. And so the whole project is to how to become free from the cave, how to become out of our slave existence. That's the project that you find in all spirituality in its essence. You find it in Buddhism, you find it in Vedanta, you find it in basically also Christianity. So what do you think the crucifixion of Christ is all about? It's not a blood sacrifice of torturing this poor person hanging on the cross. No, it's a symbolic story of a person liberating himself from the cave, from the illusions. So he is dying from his ego, from his illusions, all right, from his ignorance. And so he is reawakening with knowledge and understanding who he is. That's the whole story of the crucifixion of Christ. So the whole, so that's the next chapter on elaborating on the cave of Plato's cave, because the project is how to become free, how to come out of your slave state. Okay, and so there are several methods here, and then I would say my approach is Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dual Vedanta, and so that's the whole project. So first, but you need knowledge. That's the whole thing. You need to understand that someone has to explain to you that, look, it's like if you are in a movie and you think that what is happening on the screen in the movie house, it's going to be a nightmare. When people are shooting and there's all kinds of dramatic things happening in the film, you would be terrified because you could think, this can happen to me. But the reason why it's so enjoyable to see a film is because you know it is a film. You know it is an illusion. And so freedom is when you can have the same view on this reality, then you are free. Then you are free because you know that this reality cannot do anything to me. It cannot hurt me because I who I really am, because I am consciousness. I am the one who is experiencing the dream. So, and then, but in order to make that shift of perspective, then we need knowledge. You need to understand that the world is an illusion. It's a dream world. That is what Plato is trying to tell us in this Allergy of the Cave. So to make that shift of perspective is easier said than done. And that's also why Plato says it's only a rare slave who is able to break the chains of that we're being chained to the floor. And so, but the chains are the concepts of our own minds. It's our own imagination. That is the concept. The basic chain, the biggest chain is that I believe I am this body. That's the big problem. That my identity is that I think I am this body, I am this person, I am in the world. And so I'm basically terrified of the world because the world can do all kinds of bad things to me. And so I'm trying to manipulate the world to get security, to get the things that I want, and try to squeeze some happiness out of the world. Okay, that's the problem. And so that's the first concept, to get rid of the idea of I am the body, and so that is so deeply ingrained in my programming that immediately when I wake up in the morning, I immediately download my personal program. Oh, I'm this body, I'm this person, I'm so and so, I'm so old, I have so story, and so on. I'm completely identified with my personal story. But it's once you start the process of trying to decompose that concept of reality that I have, to decompose my dream of myself, my dream of the world, and so on, and look for the truth. What is the truth? And so the thing is that I cannot experience myself. That is not an experience. I can only be myself. So this is the whole project. And okay, so it just starts where you just got to have the knowledge. That's the starting point. That someone has to explain to you that, look, we're in a dream, and the project is how to become free of the dream. And so that's the next stage. And so then there is all kinds of methods, but basically you start out with the knowledge, or you start out with well, there is many starting points, but basically you start off normally from pain, that you start to get frustrated with the world and you're looking for a way out of the cave. And so I think I should kind of end it here. And there is, of course, many ways to become free, and the freedom comes through various paths you can follow, but basically, as I said, is to understand who you are. So the ultimate question is, who am I? And so that's also why, know thyself is also probably the essence of Plato's philosophy, and that's why it said in the Academy in Athens, that was written in the scriptures before you enter the academy, know thyself. That's the essence. That's the whole question. Who am I? So Plato, in this Allergory of the Cave, is his contribution is to saying we're living in a dream. It's a dream world. The world is not as real as we think. And there is a way out, and the way out is through philosophy and knowledge. That is what can liberate us and free us, and liberate us from the concepts in our own mind, and stop imagining things and just be. Okay, that's it for today. So have a nice cave, and I hope have a nice cave. Yeah, exactly. Have a nice incarnation, and enjoy yourself in the cave. But there is a way out if you are interested, and when you start looking for an exit out of the matrix, out of our dream world, and wake up to our true nature, to who I am.